they look at me and they're like, "Oh, you're really going to do this, aren't you?" Yeah. Like, why would I come if I'm not going to do it? And
Mm.
they're like, "You're like 1 in 100." Like, literally, like, nobody takes this information and does anything with it. And it was the hubris of youth, a huge project to do as my first project. And in a lot of ways, it nearly killed me. You literally don't score unless you shoot. So, fortune favors the bold. Like, you have to go for it if you want something.
Well, thanks for doing this. I really appreciate you coming on for the new channel. Obviously, people who've been on my old channel will know that we've already had a back and forth quite a few times about many a thing over the past year.
Yes. Yes.
But obviously, this is a new project of mine where we're going to get into creativity and into the world of art. And I think you can bring an interesting perspective to the channel because you are an architect. Basically, you are a
Yes.
build and a builder at the same time. You design and build domes. So, do you want
Yes.
to maybe explain to an audience who may not already know who you are, just what it is you're all about and what it is you want to bring to the table today?
Oh, wonderful. I am the owner operator of, well, now I've actually liquidated my one dome company. I have Coral Domes that's based out of uh, the Ozarks of Missouri. I don't want to give my precise location,
Of course.
but essentially I'm in southern Missouri. My family and I moved here from Costa Rica. In Costa Rica, I had a construction company where we built all different types of homes that essentially match the environment. I got into the notion of biomimicry through permaculture and through biodynamic farming. I had lived on, when I first moved to Costa Rica, I lived on a biodynamic farm and I was being introduced to Rudolf Steiner and all these ways of how to kind of read the natural landscape and receive the signals from it. And it kind of harkened back to when I was a kid because my dad told me when I was a little kid, I guess I was like 12, maybe 13 years old. My dad built commercial skyscrapers in South Florida. And so I'd always been around construction. But one day we saw this documentary on 60 Minutes about this old man that lived on the barrier island of North Carolina, and a hurricane came in and wiped all the houses off the barrier island. And the insurance company wouldn't pay the old man new money to move back on there and or to repair a house. They said it's too much of a risk. And he's like, I've lived here my entire life. I'm not moving. So he hired an Italian architect and construction firm that did this unique novel idea of pneumatic ferrocement dome building. And all that means is they essentially created a bladder and they filled that bladder up with air and it expanded and it had this very special type of concrete on it that expanded with the bladder and then it set really quick. And I remember looking at my dad and my dad was like, "That is the way." And I was like, I was really, because we lived in Hurricane Central where I was from in South Florida. And we were, in 91, in 1991, we had Hurricane Andrew hit us, and that was like a nuclear bomb went off. But it was devastating. So, like, learning in Costa Rica, like, how to kind of be a natural gardener, because I had never been part of nature before. Like, before that time, I'd always, like, moved all flittered about and did all these things, but I had never, like, plugged myself back into, like, a more natural-esque environment. And I kinda got the hint that, building these cubes in an environment that is is so wet and so tropical and is always shaking. Like where I was in Costa Rica, they got like 400 over 400 earthquakes a year, and a lot of them are minor. You don't even feel them. But essentially, the ground is always shaking in the circle of fire in the Pacific. And so I saw these really well built homes that, they were built beautifully, but they were cubicle. And I would see them kind of shimmy down into the ground. And it was, God essentially just like, he smacked me upside the head because we were very land rich, but cash poor. That's a common occurrence that occurs to people, that move to that area of Costa Rica. I know it was for me. We bought this big piece of land and had no money to build. And so I was going to build myself. And I remember I looked at my wife and I was like, we can't afford to have a failure because then we had this crazy rainy season and then we had a bunch of earthquakes and all these buildings were sliding down the hill. So I dedicated myself to learn how to build, but I had to build something that was resilient. And that harkened me back to like the domes. And I remember seeing, all these structures that have curves in them have the ability to withstand shear forces, essentially. That's the best way of saying it. Those are forces that are going side to side.
Mhm.
And in a normal building, your roof is always fighting your foundation. So when you have shear forces with a box, you get parallelograms. And because I was poor and I had a lot of time, I just dedicated myself to building this way. And then I also was enamored with how resilient the Costa Ricans were. There were a bunch of Costa Ricans in my neighborhood because I lived out in the sticks. I lived in the rural, like a rural part of Costa Rica. Like I didn't live in any city or anything like that. It would be like the United States equivalent to Alabama, like the middle of Alabama. It was like the sticks.
Mhm.
And there were people there that knew how to build with earth. And I was like, earth is cheap.
Yeah, that's
So in
true.
my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna build with earth. And I had always been into sculpture. My sister's an architect and she loves paper sculpture and things like that. And my whole family, like my dad was an architect, engineer. And so like we were all had this mind for, okay, we can take a two-dimensional thing and make it three-dimensional. And I'm cursed with that. Like if I draw it, it's going to come into creation, like it's happening.
Mm.
And so I started drawing these domes for my wife and I had a massage client. So at that time, my I wasn't a builder or anything. At that time, I was a masseuse, and that's the way I was making my living down there. And my client that walks in, he looks at my drawings, and I had like a bunch of drawings on the table, and he looked at the one drawing, and he actually it was like a landscape view of the a layout of what I wanted to build, my ex and I. And he's like, "That's exactly what I want." And just brashly, like out of nowhere, I said, "Well, if you send me to school to learn, I'll build it for you." And he did. So he sent me to Cal Earth University in Hesperia, California. And I got to be in the final class of Ileana Khalili, who was a famous architect. She was the wife of Nadir Khalili, who had started the university. And I had already read a bunch of the books, like he's a master in earth building. And I was just like, okay, I'm doing this. And while I was there, I was showing them the drawings that my client James, saw and he said he wanted. And I remember we were all out to dinner. It was like the third night of the workshop. And I'm like pressing the instructors. Like, so if I do this, what about this? If I do this, what about this? And they look at me and they're like, "Oh, you're really going to do this, aren't you?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Like, why would I come if I'm not going to do it?
Mm.
And they're like, "You're like 1 in 100." Like literally, like nobody takes this information and does anything with it. And I'm like, I thought that was nuts. And I was like,
It
"No." And
is.
so and I was like, the lead instructor was like, "Well, you can start your practicum with me. I have this project that we're finishing in Joshua Tree National Park. Come stay, extend your trip, and I'll show you some of the finer points." So I stayed, I extended my trip, and it was great experience because I got like real one-on-one experience. And then I went back to Costa Rica, and then it was balls to the wall for 4 months, and we built this massive 3 dome. I think it was 250-ton structure of earth bags, this triple dome monstrosity on the side of a hill. And it was the hubris of youth. It was a huge project to do as my first project. And in a lot of ways, it nearly killed me because nobody knew the process. So,
Mm,
like, I was running a crew of 10 guys. I was the only one that knew how to pack the bags because when dealing with earth, you have to do a lot of ramming. That's why it's called rammed earth construction. And I was the only thing that makes it work is the shape, and that's what I cared about. I cared about the shape, the ergonomics, like why does this beehive shape work? And it was crazy too, Paul, because when I was actually building the bags, like actually doing the hard labor, bees would land on me and literally like lick the sweat off me. I had like this it was crazy because, down there there's so few areas where like the insects or anything can get salt.
mm.
And it's very hard, arduous work. And so here I was building these like beehive domes and then having all these bees land on me. It was kind of cool. So that's like what started me with, I called it sculpting. I'm more of a sculptor than an artist. And that kind of put me on the map. Like from that point on, it was a great success. The building is still perfect. None of the earthquakes in that area have affected it. The owner sold it, and my friend, he's passed on, but other people that have owned it have loved it. I consult with them all the time, whoever owns it, about how to like maintain it and things like that. But that was my start with the big domes, and then we graduated into building other types of structures. But the one thing that I always try to maintain with my company was one way or another, we're going to put curves into our structures.
Mm.
Like we because it's just so much smarter. One, if curves are beautiful, and but two, they're just structurally more sound.
Mhm.
And so just real simply, like if you have a flat plane, like a wall, if you put a 6-degree concave curve in it, it's now 7 times stronger. If you
Interesting.
put a double concave, the same surface area, everything, but in the same materials, it's now 13 times stronger.
Mm.
That's mind blowing. And
It's a
that's
huge
why
difference, yeah.
and that's why it was so like, for me, as somebody that loves efficiency, I'm not the most efficient person. But I was just like, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. I can use the same amount of materials and get 13 times more strength. And so, yeah, I finished that project in September of 2008. And since then, I've just been working my craft of like what materials to use, what other styles, what other techniques can I use to expand that range.
Mm, excellent. Is that a drawing behind you there, I see?
Yes. Yeah. This is what I just currently am building. This is like the Japanese star dome. So
Can we get a closer look at that? That looked really, really cool.
yeah, this is a Pi dome. This is what I did last year for the Barataria Times National Festival.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah. And so this geometry right here, this is called Pi.
Mhm.
And so this is what I've graduated to. Like I no longer build the huge super Adobe domes
Mhm.
because the super Adobe is so heavy. It's a lot of work and you
Mhm.
can't scale up. With this, it was 2010 and I was tired. After
Yeah.
like 3 years of pounding all these bags and like doing all that, I was just like, there has to be a better way. And I actually prayed to God about it. I was like, God, do you really want me to build domes? And I got the big yes.
Mhm.
And then it wasn't more than like a month later, I found this system with the star dome. It's called a Japanese star dome. And what the Japanese star dome did, it made the Buckminster Fuller buckyball. Like everybody's seen those little triangle domes and stuff like that.
Mhm.
It it fix the problem that those have. And all those domes have a real problem. And the main thing is the joinery, where all those little triangles come together. If you're in a humid environment, those joints fail.
Mhm.
They just do. And so what this Japanese guy figured out, he had his moment, like his Jodie Foster contact moment, where he was a mathematician and he was looking at the math of geometries and mandalas. And he was looking at the phi ratio, because the phi ratio is like if you have a pentagon is made out of three phi ratio triangles.
Mhm.
And when he was looking at a mandala that was comprised of that, he had that moment, like in the movie Contact, he saw it in 3 dimensions. And he's like, oh. And so what's beautiful about these domes is we just completed a 24-foot diameter dome with a mezzanine in it. So that gives a person in that dome a little bit around 700 square feet of living area inside.
Mhm.
This is a nice sized dome. Now, in that dome, the structure of it is made out of only 15 struts. And those struts all overlap each other.
Mhm.
So, in the back of my mind, I'm trying to be functional. In the back of my mind, the entire time, I'm like, okay, how do I minimize the amount of labor? How do I minimize the amount of weight that's coming to the structure? Like, it's all the practical things. Like, you and I have talked about Antiquitech, all this stuff. When you're building in the middle of the tropics in the Banana Republic, the considerations are so like what it was for the frontiersmen here in the United States. It was like, you can we get past the river today?
Yeah.
Can does the truck like it's mind-boggling what you have to consider just to get materials to a site. So I was looking at how can I actually keep the form factor that I want, which is very resilient in tropical storms and in earthquakes. Now we're finding in tornadoes. And how can I keep that form factor? It's hyper practical. Because one of the things that you have to teach hippies, like that are really into earth building, is the one thing you have to say is if it takes a lot of maintenance, it's not durable, it's not, um, how should I say it? It's not earth friendly.
Mhm.
'Cause that's one of those things you have to deal with people that have I call it green guilt, all the all the Tavistock programming around, feel bad, the new original sin, you're a carbon breather, you're a mouth breather. All that stuff is absolute BS. And
Mhm.
I should say within all this, with me building this whole thing and learning this trade, at that time, I always had to make I had to do border runs to get my visa stamps.
Mhm.
And we would make these border runs down to Panama. And one day I just happened to be in this little cafe where General Bert Stubblebine was. General Bert Stubblebine was the guy that in the US military was responsible for remote viewing. Now, when I met the man, he was in his mid 80s. He was long retired. He was dishonorably discharged. And he and his wife, Dr. Rima Labo, they had been, traipsing about, protesting all the UN's newfangled thing, Agenda 21. Now, this is like
Mhm.
2009 when I met him.
Mhm.
And so he and I strike up this great conversation. He ends up hiring me to like go ahead and advise him on properties to look at and buy in that area of the world. And so I spent a lot of time with him in a car, and he's just talking with me and I'm talking with him. And it's just this big rap session for hours and hours and hours. And he got me like the white papers of what Agenda 21 was. And I just had this like full on knowingness. It's like, okay, they're gonna use carbon. They're trying to use carbon as the new, I guess you would call it the new original sin.
Mhm.
I found out there's this great carbon amendment called biochar. I'm going to be a biochar producer. But I knew in the back of my mind, there are so many secondary benefits that this would do. Number one, from their perspective, I was fixing carbon. So my carbon credits would go down. But I was actually making fun of it. I was making fun of their BS because when you add carbon to anything, it makes it better.
Mhm.
Like when you add carbon to concrete, like especially the biochar, it makes it better. So I could do these sculptures now where when I was sculpting these ferrocement sculptures, or even when I was doing earthen sculpture, if I added just a little bit of this biochar stuff into it, everything would set up better and harder and be more resilient and all this stuff. So I was just getting like this humongous, I guess you would call it phenomenology with materials science, being a natural builder first,
Mhm.
and then being told like the most abundant compound on the earth is the devil. And it's literally the devil, like it's 666, right?
Oh, well,
so
yeah.
so like I'm seeing, I'm like, oh, okay, so what they're gonna do is they're gonna demonize this thing so nobody uses it.
Mhm. That makes sense.
I'm going the other way.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make a company that uses it. I'm gonna make a company that makes it. I'm gonna make a podcast that it's in the name.
That's it.
And it's awesome. Like, it all works, and it's
Mhm.
all using exactly what God gave us, and just understanding that, like, "Oh my god, there's nothing more abundant in this world than carbon."
Mhm.
Like, literally, there's nothing more abundant.
That's it. Well, there's
You can't.
they're taxing carbon here everywhere and everywhere now. Even in the UK, I think there's a carbon tax for going into certain parts of the UK. If you have a car that doesn't fit specific guidelines of emissions or
Right.
something like that, then you end up being slapped with a fine. Doesn't matter where if you cross the line, that's it. You get a fine. You can't fight it. There's nothing you can do, and you're basically being penalised for having an old car.
Right.
And it's ridiculous. I got one when I went to Scotland. I didn't think my car was even that bad. It's. I think the standards are ridiculous, and it
Mhm.
seems to be pushing people to go to electric or something like that. I think that's definitely going around the
Yeah.
corner. But it sounds to me from your story there, it's kind of you have also kind of been confronted within your craft of building and architecture in a sense by this what's it called? Like a controlling thought, like a particularly liberal, left leaning type agenda or thought that kind of is in a way trying to control or perhaps tarnish or degrade your craft in some way.
That's
Um,
mhm.
and I think again in the art world, which is where I come from, the same thing, and it's always the same people. Have you encountered any pushback, or have you yourself experienced like that feeling of what would we call it? Malaise, I suppose, or something towards the industry itself because of these people that are kind of
Well, I purposely put myself in the in the most specific niche in the world
yes, you have.
because because I figured out at very early in my building career that I was an artist. I'm not a builder.
Hmm.
In fact, I even tell my clients now, I'm like, I am an artist pretending to be a builder. I get very emotionally attached to my designs. I put my heart and soul into it. I really don't want input. And
Hmm.
I was doing this I tell this story a lot, so I'll abbreviate it, but a friend of mine, a very famous architect, he was building these beautiful Japanese style farmhouses where they were all done in this dark windfall mahogany wood. And it was in a very an exclusive part of the Osa Peninsula of Costa Rica. And it was like in a neighborhood, like everything, like, Paul Allen's neighborhood, like big money. And he brought me in because all the wood was very dark. It was this dark mahogany wood. In Japanese farmhouses, they always have white walls. And the client wanted these walls perfectly matte white to contrast the dark mahogany wood. And I had figured out this way of doing a bareke, which you would know it in your neck of the woods of England as cob. And cob construction is when you mix clay with some sort of natural fiber and a little bit of sand in the straw, like in your neck of the world. The straw acts like chaos theory. It
Mm.
all like gives mechanical strength. And you guys have houses in England that are 400 years old that have these big thick walls of just clay and straw.
Hmm. Yeah.
And they have a lime wash that keeps water from penetrating. Well, I figured out a way in the tropics to do that same thing, but with coconut fiber.
Mm. Interesting.
And so the coconut fiber was acting as my straw, because when you're in such a wet environment that I was in, I needed something that was antimicrobial and antifungal, which coconut fiber is. The problem is getting enough coconut fiber is extremely laborious.
Mhm. I
So
imagine.
anyway so anyway, they end up doing this wall, this perfectly flat, lathe wall with this Bareke style. It took 2 weeks. Like this is like a labor intensive thing. In this like the whole thing was just a perfect build. Like when I say perfect, it was the best build I was ever a part of. And I just happened to be there in the evenings. We would all go out and have dinner. And there was a famous bambooista who was actually German, and his name was Reinhardt. And Reinhardt was putting in this crazy installation. And he and I were talking. And he told me, he's like, in his German accent, he's like, Topher, you're not a builder, you're an artist. And I'm like, I kind of was offended. And he's like, "No, no, 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 no." He's like, "You can't charge by the hour. You can't do that." He goes, "You gotta charge by the honorarium." And I never heard that term honorarium. And he was like a world famous artist. Like I had no idea that there was such a thing. And and my sister is an artist, so I asked her, and she's like, yeah, it's just a commission that you're given up front, and you do it on your time. Obviously there's expectations, but it's
Mm.
your baby. And Reinhardt was telling me like flat out, he was like, "These are my stipulations. The owner cannot come onto the property until I'm done. I am to receive no communication while I'm in process." Like he had all these things in his station with his art. He could do that, right? And I
Mhm.
loved it. I was like, that is my North Star. That's what I'm shooting for, is to get to the point of where like, okay, I'm charging what I charge. I'm an artist. I'm not doing this for a living. Like
Mhm.
I'm like you in fact, there's not enough money that you can pay me for this. Like, so in that, just know that's where you are in like the hierarchy of my mind. In every true artist, I know every single one of them feels that way. Whether they're a vocal artist or a musician or a graphite artist or a painter or a metal art, like every artist I've met in every different venue, their heart is so invested in, they care so much about what they're actually putting out there on the table, that like the money is only to see if there's appreciation.
Mhm. Oh, yeah. I
It's
understand that.
almost it's almost like if they appreciate, like if you were to get them money but you felt disrespected in the lack of appreciation, you would just take your art away.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I think that's why there's so many like quote unquote starving artists, because it's like it's literally an offense. It's an offense.
Mhm.
And
I
that's
bet.
why and that's why I was so adamant in discussing with you that I know these old buildings were inspired.
Mhm.
There is such magnificent artistry. I know that it was inspired. This was not wage slave stuff. This was not like, guilds working with no, no. Uh-uh.
No. It doesn't seem like all this architecture from, like, say, this, well, they call it kind of, the Renaissance period, coming into the industrialist period, then coming into, like, the deconstructionist period. It's kind of, people were definitely inspired, to make everything they made creativity wise, including music as well. I mean, think of the orchestras that were around during this time. Everything was
Mhm.
a labor of love. It was not just for
Right.
practicality's sake. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? There was no mass production about any of these things. It was, this is the thing, and this is what I'm
Right.
putting all my time into, and this is what my name will be attached to. And then people cared. People really cared once about
Yes.
what they put out there in the world, especially when it came to architecture. And like I
Mhm.
said on my other channel, we've been through this many times, but I've showcased hundreds and thousands of buildings all over the earth that were made 200 years, 300 years, even 700, maybe 1,000 years ago, and then
Mhm.
some, which are just immaculate. Even
Yeah.
today, still immaculate. Like, and they didn't decay, and they maintain the form and structure in such a beautiful way that we look at it today and we feel shame. I think, like,
Mhm.
even as somebody who's in the culture, and I'm in Britain, so I'm surrounded by gorgeous architecture that's thousands of years old, and I look at it and I feel not pride, because I didn't build these things, and we can't build these things. This is not ours. Like,
No.
this is other people who were not of our mind. Like, they were something else, and it's like I feel shameful to be a part of whatever I'm a part of today compared to what they are, because what we build today is awful. It's truly, it kills the soul. It's the only way to describe it.
Yeah.
It's straight lines. It's minimalist. It's a cube within a cube,
Mhm.
held within more cubes, and then
Right.
it's functional so far as it's a place to go and waste your time and work,
Mhm.
or something like that. It's designed to get you in, to do the thing, and then get you out. It's the functions of the buildings we build today are sad. Like, but
Yes.
people in the past, they built things just for beauty's sake. Like, you have,
Mhm.
oh, I've got this reception room. What for? Nothing. It just showcases some artwork and it's beautiful. Look at the carpet, Look at the staircase
Mm.
over there. This type of thing is kind of, it just sets the mood for coming into the house type of situation. But we don't do that. We don't do that now. And it's sad. I think, like I said, as an artist yourself and a builder, I think in a way what you're doing is trying to bring back natural form and beauty straight from nature itself. Which I think, like I said, these
Mhm.
old buildings were certainly inspired by geometry, way
Yes.
far beyond what we're inspired by today. With becomes, I'm talking like real, like I said, phi ratios, golden ratios,
Mhm.
sacred geometry, flower of life patterns, mandala effect patterns. Um,
Mhm.
they were there in everything they did, and sound and frequency was intimately linked with these buildings. And it's
Definitely.
kind of, what's that description I always come up with? I think you may have come with it. It's like it's sound manifested to physical reality or something like that.
Exactly. It's frozen music.
Frozen music. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah. And
Yeah.
talking about the degradation of art, it's clear that's what's happened even in architecture. And I
Mhm.
think people like you are like radicals today, going out there with a dream that it's kind of, no,
Yes.
I'm gonna do it anyway. I'm gonna build these domes that are in a way that
But
manifests
the
all these forms, and it's
but
incredible.
the fun but the funniest thing is with this, and this is where I've kind of wedged my foot into a very interesting thing. You know, I firmly believe God turns whatever evil that there is, whatever evil that there is, you can flip it on its head for the good.
Hmm.
So it's very apparent to me that Agenda 21 and Agenda 25, the addendum Agenda 2030, they're very evil plans. They're there to like, well, human creativity, human ingenuity, all the rest of it. But at the same time, they're saying the reason why we're doing this is because of climate change.
Hmm.
Well, the funniest thing is what's the most resilient shapes that can handle climate change? It's curvilinear things. So
Hmm.
here, since they've been implemented the Bauhaus style of architecture, which, like you said, is the cube within the cube within the cube. My dad was actually really upset because when he was in architectural college, they had shifted his first year to his second year. In his second year, they introduced the Bauhaus method. And the one thing he liked about the Bauhaus was that when you were in that style of architecture, your furniture to your structure, you had to know how to do it all from one to one. But you lost all of the artistry. Everything was the function. And I mean, as a little kid, I was hearing this. He goes, they're getting way, way, way too dependent on materials because before our ancestors, now what's funny is at, at his level of knowledge in like the 70s, right? He was being told and he was being, programmed to believe that our materials in the modern era are superior. But he was under the impression, though, that the older structures were much more reliant on geometry. And he told me flat out, like going because we lived in Florida, so we were always going over bridges. And so he was like, he goes, he's like vaults, arches, like he says, I'll lean on geometry much more than I'll ever lean on materials. And now at that age, it wasn't like I was trying to be an apprentice builder. I was like a doofus little kid, just like, wanting to go kick a soccer ball or whatever. But I was getting all these little tidbits in the back of my mind. Lean on architecture or lean on geometry. Don't lean on materials. And what the Bauhaus style building and what all these new buildings do, it's just like, well, instead of having an arch over your window, we're just gonna like quadruple the amount of rafter that we use, and that will take care of it. And we saw when Andrew hit, and then all the other natural disasters I've lived through, like it fits disaster capitalism. So it's like the Bauhaus method, like you said, these old structures, they've seen it all. Yet they're
Yeah.
still standing and they're nearly perfect. Well,
Mm.
that doesn't really work well in an economy that's based on debt and and like, in the United States, they've proven like the whole construction industry was essentially lifted up by like the home improvement channel. Like, literally everybody got brainwashed, like, "Oh, you have to renovate your kitchen. You have to renovate your bathrooms. You have to renovate this. You have to renovate that." Now, granted, yeah, lots of houses need to be renovated. Like, we bought this, 50-year-old farmhouse in the middle of Missouri that was decrepit. This needs a renovation. But I've been in beautiful houses that were 10 years old, and they're like, "Oh, we need a new kitchen." $100,000 later. It's
Yeah.
just like it's just ridiculous. And
In
they're
10,
being
in 10 years' time, I'll get ripped out and a new one will get put in because it's outdated or something like that. I mean, it's
yeah,
what's the word? I think the phrase is planned obsolescence. I think
exactly.
that's the issue of our time, isn't it? Everything's designed to break eventually.
Yeah,
Your washing machine, for example, the handle will always snap after like 5 to 10 years. You'll have to go and
right.
buy a new one. There's no replacement handle. Something like that, or your phone will stop working. Give it enough
Mhm.
time because the updates
Yeah,
required and the speeds required to keep up with the necessity and the speeds and the data and everything that it downloads and what it takes, your phone will not keep up, and it will
right.
have to be. You have to buy another one and forever be buying another one. And like what you're describing here, it seems like this Bauhaus style that was created for that specific reason. It's kind of these are built to fail. They're built to be destroyed. The next thing
Mhm.
that comes along, the next tornado, tsunami, disaster, earthquake, whatever it is, fire, whatever, these things are going to wiped off the map, and then we get to come back in and rebuild something else and get paid a lot of money to do it again. And it's kind of don't
Yeah.
build it to last. But how we're going to make our money? And isn't this what happened with the light bulb? Wasn't that the
Yep.
problem originally with the light bulb? Like he built this perfect thing, and it's kind of
Mhm.
it'll last forever. There's a lifetime guarantee on this. And like, well, and there's someone else like we can't make any money off this. So make it so it breaks.
Mhm.
basically, and then they make millions, and that's sad, isn't it? Again, it's another sad fact of reality that has kind of
It
trickled down into our society, and we take it as a given. No, that's just how it is. But no, it's not. It's by design. Like, I
yeah.
don't know. I'm rambling now. Go ahead. I'll give
No,
it back
no,
to you.
you're not rambling because I think disaster capitalism and planned obsolescence are they're the same thing in a lot of ways.
Mhm,
Um, they run parallel tracks. My stepfather is 86 years old. He was like cleaning out his garage and he had all this silver from his parents' marriage near the turn of the 20th century, like 1901, 1902. And they had long passed and he had all this silver and he knew I'm a nut. And this is this is when I was living down in Costa Rica. And I was like the redheaded stepchild of the family. I was the hippie masseuse that builds domes that lives in the cloud forest. Like,
mm,
and he's like, do you like you'd probably appreciate, these percolators and these things. I'm like, an all silver percolator from 1902? Count me in. The thing still worked. All I had to do was replace that because it had a different pronged plug,
mhm,
for like the outlets in 1902 aren't the same as outlets now. So I just changed the thing. It worked immaculately. It
mhm,
115 years later,
mhm.
could
That's
you
right.
imagine any appliance that you would buy now that would actually work in 115 years?
I don't think I've owned appliances that have lasted longer than that. Like, I can't think of anything now at being the age of 33 that I have from childhood that's made it this far. Anything at all. Nothing. Like, I don't own anything from my like, other than, like, I don't know, faded photographs or something like that, which eventually they'll turn to white and disappear forever as well.
Right.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. I mean, yeah.
And this thing was a piece of art. This silver, all of it, we still have it.
Mhm,
The way they did the glass, you could tell it was hand blown glass caps. You could actually see it was a coffee percolator. And, I know you guys love your tea and crumpets over there. You could put tea in it. You could put whatever. It had all these different silver inlays with different perforations depending on what grinds you were putting into it. I mean, so thoroughly, and you could see it with hand stamped on the bottom by the creator. It
mhm.
had the nut, like it was beautiful. Just a little silver polish on that thing, change the plug. And that to me is like when you can make something that's permanent or more permanent, you're honoring God, and that's why like this last dome that we've been building here in the Ozarks. It's so strong. It's a resonant cavity, not only because of its shape and the geometries, but the solidity of it. It's gonna be here in a few hundred years. Like people will I put this little tag on Instagram. I was like, bringing Missouri mounds back, because Missouri's known for mounds. In fact, you'll find this funny. I was feeling a lot of guilt when I was leaving Costa Rica because it was during COVID and there was all this craziness. And I was leaving my whole life behind to like kind of protect my family. And a friend of mine who was a shaman, I was telling him how guilty I felt for leaving. And he was like, he was kind of still for a moment. And he looked at me, he's like, no, no, what you do resonates with where you're going. Like you need to go there. And that kind of gave me like a reprieve because first I got the message from God, like, you got to go, like, go. But I was still dealing with all the human emotions with it. And then when he said that to me, and then I had no history, I had no knowledge of this area of all the mounds and the caves and all the different things that are in this area. I was just like, oh, of course I'm here. Like
Mhm,
this is it's neat. Like it's literally the geological name of my daughter, Savannah. It's the actual, there's so many resonant cavities here. And like the whole area used to be ritually burned, like biocharized
Mhm.
all the time when it was a savanna. That's why it was so nutrient dense.
Mhm.
That's why when the settlers came here, it was just like this, the best farmland in the world was because the savanna, when they would burn the grasses and everything like that, would lay down these sheets of carbon, and then that would bring all the fowl and all the birds and everything like that. And like the fertility in this area was so crazy. And I had no idea about any of that stuff. And so that's like there's something with frequency is location. And my mind had been so obsessed on building these form factored structures. And I was doing that for like 10 solid years in Costa Rica. But then my company grew to such a size where we started building boxes and I hated it.
Mhm.
Even though I built some really cool octagons, I have to say.
Mm.
But and I was like, no, I don't want to do that. Like that's not me. This is what I want. I want biochar. I want to sculpt houses. I want to be on a job site where my daughter can come on the job site and touch all of the materials that are on the job site.
Mhm.
And it was such this beautiful scene because I had like 10 guys working on this dome and we're all, laying material. And there's my daughter running around. And my wife reminded me, she's like, this is what you wanted. You wanted it to be where your daughter could run around the job site and be safe and like not be worried about the chemicals or anything like that. And so it's a pretty cool, feeling to see that and watch that.
Incredible. It must
Mhm.
be. I mean,
Yeah.
I understand the feeling of taking that leap of faith and going out on your own to actually do what you want to do with your life. And that's pretty much what I've done. That's what I've carved out for myself here, and this is how I do it. Again, I got my children just right next to me right now, sleeping. And it's an amazing thing that
Yes.
they can have an example that you can do it on your own. You don't have to follow
Mhm.
the trends, the patterns. Go to school, get the degree, get the job, get the 9 to 5. You can do your own thing and produce something that's actually meaningful in the world. I think you're doing just that from the sounds of it. So I can empathize with the feeling, absolutely. And good for you is all I can really say. Because in this world, like even in the art world, I think people have also feel like you have to follow a pattern. You have to go down the gallery route or something like that. You've
Mhm.
got to play this game, and at any moment you can go, no, I can do what I want to do and do it with passion. And I think that's what's lacking in
Mhm.
modern creativity. I think artists are a bit jaded, and it probably isn't anymore really any fault of their own. It's because the system's corrupt, and they think they have to. It's a rigged game. Why bother? Type of feeling. So they never get going to begin with. But if you have true desire and passion for what you do, you will do it, and God will make a way. Like could just do it,
Yes.
just do it, and believe that you can do it. And I know it
Mhm.
sounds cliche, but it works. It actually works. It's things will work out how they're supposed to work out. But like I said, you have to actually want it. You have to know that this is what I am. This is who I am. It's kind of if you're true to your own creativity and actually care about what you're going to produce, I feel like everything just falls into place for artists in many ways. And you're living proof of that, I would say.
Yeah. I have to say, I mean, that's been like my dad told me when I was a little kid, he goes, God helps those who help themselves. Like he
Hmm.
was very adamant about that. And like I have to say, both my parents, but especially my father, was very much like whenever I wanted something, he never said no, but then he never directly gave it to me. Like I told him I was really into a hobby that was kind of expensive, which was remote control cars. And I was like 11 years old and I told him I needed money. And he goes, okay, I'll help you start a lawn care business. He goes, I know you know how to mow lawns. I know you know how to trim. I know you know how to do this, this, and this. And so he gave me this nice receipt box where I could write receipts and like look official. And
Hmm.
in a very short order of time, because I was willing to work, I was willing to put the time in, I was making a really good living for an 11-year-old.
Yeah, I bet.
It was all going towards my hobby, but still, I was given I was blessed with very, very positive role models in that way.
Mhm.
Like, it was like when Hurricane Andrew hit in 1991, my best friend and I, we were only 15 years old. It was crazy. So Andrew hits and devastates South Florida. There was, like, no power for a few days, and then Miami had no power for, like, a few weeks. And in our area, the main thing that we had to deal with was with downed trees. And what do our parents do? They buy us chainsaws. So here's these 2 15-year-old boys riding around on their bikes with chainsaws, going to people, and like we were cutting all these trees with chainsaws, like half the time with no shoes on, just like, "Eh." No, it sounds kind of stupid, right? But it was just like they were sort of like a self-empowerment of like, go get it, like go get it. And so I also had like my first coach in soccer. He was like, you don't score unless you shoot. You literally don't score unless you shoot. So, fortune favors the bold. Like, you have to go for it if you want something. And where peace started to come to me was when I started to understand that not everybody has passion. There's a lot of people that are just going along to get along, and that is just fine. Those people are those people. That's their role. Not everybody has passion. Not everybody cares. Like, you try and get me to do a mundane task that I don't care about, I'm the worst person you want to ask. But there's 100 to 1 people that can do that mundane task because that's what needs to get done. Da, 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 that are so much better about that than I. But there are so many of those people that cannot like get anywhere at the level of like inspiration that I can get to, you know what I'm saying? So it all ends up balancing out. Like
Mhm.
I find now that I manage a bunch of people in different venues, it's just like, oh, a lot of the time it's about the art of psychology. It's the art of finding what incentivizes people.
Mhm.
And for me, the incentivization has always been God is perfect. And the closer you get to perfection, the more inspired it is. And the more inspired it is, the the longer it lasts.
That's right.
It's just because it's inspired on so many levels. Like, it's not just the form factor, it's not just the artistry, it's the material science.
Mhm.
Also, the material science is so perfect. Like, when I started learning about Roman cement, I was learning about Roman cement in natural construction because where we lived in Costa Rica and a lot of my clientele, they were trying to alleviate their green guilt. And so cement was getting a really bad rap. Like concrete was like a no-no, because it uses so much carbon. And so I was trying to, generate business. And I was also reading in all these books about like, okay, lime mortars and plaster of Paris, and then also like how you actually go into this Roman cement thing. And what they kept talking about in all of these books about the Roman cement was that Roman cement is like almost like a self-correcting geode.
Mhm.
And I was like, wait a minute. You're telling me, the the regular history of Rome, they're building aqueducts. They're building things that you'll never see out of a self-correcting crystalline concrete. And so I went to like it was so mind blowing to me that like that's the level of inspiration. That is like that, when I was learning about this stuff was way before anybody was talking about Antiquitech, at least, I mean, I didn't even have the internet back then in the cloud forest when that was happening.
Mhm.
But, like, that was so mind-boggling to me. And so I started making my own. And then I went to the Geopolymer Institute in Saint Michel, France, because I have a tendency to like to go to the horse's mouth with these things.
Mm.
And met Dr. Davidovitz, the gentleman that figured out how to actually how to make geopolymers, in mass. And it was amazing what they were sharing, like with the different, um, I guess you would say, recipes that there are depending on what your strata is, where you are in the world. Absolutely, like, mind-boggling thing. But getting back what we were saying earlier is in the past, these buildings that we see that I mean, I'm projecting that those were public buildings. Those were like out at large. Nowadays, the geopolymer buildings are only being used for military.
That tells a lot of tales there, doesn't it? That alone.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought it was interesting what you said there about though in Roman architecture, things people would never even see still
Mhm.
had perfection and talent and
Right.
skill and time and inspiration put into it. And I think that's kind
Mhm.
of a good ethos to take away because we have to start wrapping this up now because I do have another guest on straight after this
Okay.
in the next 3 minutes. But I think that that alone says something about what it is to be inspired or to be an artist
Mhm.
who actually cares. And it is
Mhm.
pay attention to the details, even in the things that people will never see. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? And I think that's what's missing from a lot of modern arts. It's all about presentation. It's all about what the public sees, not what goes on behind the scenes type of thing. It's like this, and you'll find that someone can get away with scribbling up a piece of paper and putting it in a gallery and saying it's artwork and just tell you they thought deeply about it before doing it. But it's
Mhm.
kind of, there's nothing actually to that. There's no substance. And like the substance comes from the work to get there, I think.
Mhm.
And everybody wants to be a famous artist without actually trying in a way. Do you get what I mean? And that's kind of the problem. And our culture kind of lets that happen. The 15 minutes of
Mhm.
fame scenario, the Instagram type of fame scenario, that everybody gets
Mhm.
their time, everyone goes viral once in their life type of attitude. And I think that's it. That's kind of destroying passion and creativity in art in many ways. And I think we all need to go back to that understanding. It's kind of be weary of unearned wisdom. It's kind of
Definitely.
you have to have a story that inspires. And I think good role models like your father are needed in the art world. And I'm hoping this channel
Mhm.
can bring those role models to the public. And if people can see out there that there are people getting it, going out there and getting it, you know. So thanks for coming on
Definitely.
and sharing your story. Any closing thoughts before we end this?
It's just exactly that. I never, like, wanted to label myself my artist. I just went fully passionate I was obsessive. Like every artist I know that's good is obsessive. I obsessed over my craft, and then my environment reflected to me, "Oh, you're an artist." Like, you are doing this, like, you are adding beauty to the world, and just know anytime that you can add beauty to the world, you're honoring the Father's creation.
Amen to that. Right, Chris, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. It's been great having you on. You're always a wealth of knowledge every time I speak to you. You've got many stories to tell as well. I'm sure you have many more to come. Hopefully we can get you back on in the future.
Yeah, sure. Sure.
Absolutely. Do you want to just let the people know where they can find your stuff, and then we'll close this show out?
Yes, I have the BioCharisma podcast on all the players. I'm BioCharisma on Instagram, YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, all those, channels. I don't even know if Odyssey is still doing their thing. Yeah, you can find me under the BioCharisma moniker, and my website is topherhq.com if you want to see some of my tropical builds, and BioCharisma TV is going to be released by the end of the month.
Oh, interesting. I'm looking forward to that. And Instagram, I'm always on there with and seeing you posting your builds on there all the time, mid build. You just
Yes.
showing off your work. So I'm going to make sure people go check that out as well. I'll leave all the links to
Awesome.
these in the description to this video too. But thanks again, Chris, and God bless.
My pleasure. Talk to you soon, Paul.
Bye now.